Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. Thank you for joining, and welcome to another session of our Day One and Beyond's webinar series, where we take you through various topics and activities related to building out on the Oracle Cloud. For today's topic, we'll be going over getting started with Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, where we will cover core OCI concepts, navigating through the OCI console, and performing several common tasks within several core services. My name is Borna Shamlu. I'm a cloud engineer with the cloud enablement team here at Oracle. And our expert presenters for today's session are Win Yang and Lynn Lewis. With that, I'll hand it over to Winnie and Lynn.
Well, thank you. I'm going to be starting today. Hope everyone's uh, ready to listen and listen hard because I'm going to run fast here. We've got a lot to cover, and I talk um, too much about some of this because I enjoy it so much. But we're going to be talking about the basics of OCI, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. And one of the things I like to do, because this isn't about uh, the slides. It's about you becoming proficient in going and understanding and working in OCI. So if you go to our web page and you look under resources, you'll see we have documentation, reference architectures, tutorials and hands-on labs, as well as step-by-step videos. Let's take a glance at each of those. So in the documentation, you'll see that we have a lot of information. New stuff is marked as new. It's organized. It changes sometimes, but it's a good place to start, in particular if you're interested in things. And note too that we have our multi-cloud discussion here with databases in AWS, Azure, and Google. The architectures, we have over 640 different architectures that somebody has tried sometime. Many of them have either Ansible or Terraform or both. We have a whole series of labs that you can work through, tutorials. Many of these have, you can have access to some space that we'll give you for a limited period of time to do it, and a Linux instance to do it with. But you can, as much as anything else, just going through the recipes, the step-by-step can be helpful. Likewise with the live labs, those two are available. By the way, these are available as well on GitHub under Oracle. So Oracle has a GitHub site, and we have a lot of open source material there. On YouTube, we have our Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. It's one of the different subscriptions you can have there. You can have Oracle Learn. Right now, there's a whole host of training that's available for free for you. These are not certificates. They're simply badges, if you will. These are about 3 to 4 hours. I reviewed a couple of these over the holidays just to make sure I was telling you the truth. And they're pretty straightforward. You take a test and it works out for you. And then likewise, these are a little longer, 5 to 7 hours of training, but and they're not going to make you a Java programmer, but they'll help you understand where Java is and where it's going, and where you can find it effective. So that's it. Then there's also Ask Tom. It's a good place to take a look at anything to do with data analysis, or database. And then I used to be a developer a long time ago. And so I'm a developer with NVIDIA, with ARM, AMD, and IBM. And the reason to remember about that is if you're using those instances on our infrastructure, it's useful to understand what they have, what tools they have, in particular with NVIDIA. If you're interested in working with some of their hardware, their GPUs on our platform, we have some approved containers. They have a lot of approved containers. So, and other tools that are available for you too. So that's something that you can work with in a way that make you effective from the very beginning with some of these systems. So let's get to the presentation. Well, you see what I look like, but Winnie's going to be doing the demo, so I'm going to be doing the talking, and she's going to be doing the work. So it's all about the foundations of OCI. And when we're talking about that, it's as much as anything else a vocabulary. And the other way I like to think about it is, long time ago, I wore a green suit for a while, and we'd have Velcro for our patches, right? So this is a way of brushing up your Velcro after you wash the Nomex when you weren't supposed to. Then you would brush up the Velcro so the patches would stick again. So this is for the inside of your head. So when we throw things at you, or you read things, or you get a sense of what's going on with respect to the um, documentation and the other things, that this will be a good place for you to start. So we're going to talk a little bit about identity and access management. We will not make you an expert. Networking is pretty straightforward, but we're not going to make you an expert on any of this. Compute, storage, database, and then Winnie's going to do you the demonstration. So one of the big changes that takes place when you work from your data center to somebody else's data center, and this is pretty much anybody in the industry right now. A lot of the concepts I'm going to be going over are actually very much appropriate to any public data center. So in a sense that if you're just using infrastructure as a service, we're going to do everything up through the virtualization. If you start using Linux, if it's a Oracle Linux or Windows, in NVIDIA, excuse me, in our data centers, we're going to take the first call on that. In the marketplace, there must be at least 15 or 20 other different Linux that are approved for our different images, our hardware shapes. So those two are available, but those you'll have to make an arrangement with those respective providers secondary. So the next area is the application. If you bring a third-party application, but if you use one of our applications, we'll be responsible for that. You're always responsible for your data, but one of the key elements about it is it's always, the minute it touches our edge, it's encrypted. It's encrypted at rest, it's encrypted at motion. We're going to give you standard public tools for you to control your user and access management. And what's really been fantastic in the last 5 years, really in the last 3 years, we've all sort of worked together and we've written around Active Directory, but we've as an industry. So in any case, we're able to interchange data. Your access from one to the other. And I'll talk just briefly about that later as well. So again, just to reemphasize, we build up the hardware. We put these systems in place. Some of them we've rented space, and that's actually provided a really good benefit, because sometimes we've rented the same space that our friends at Google and Azure and AWS have rented space in as well. So that provider can just drop a cable between the two, and then you can get really good low latency between their racks and our racks. So we provide the basics, of course, compute, storage, and another thing to little praise for the academics from 15 years ago that came up with software defined networks. We just couldn't do this, any of us in the industry, if it wasn't good, if we didn't have really robust software defined networks and a good way to work with them. Of course, you're going to find our databases. We're going to find open source databases, native VMware we're going to provide for you. Of course, we have data, so there's machine learning and artificial intelligence. And we have, of course, our BIEE, which we now call Analytics Cloud, or service on site. But all these things are available to you in the system. And where are they available? Well, just about anywhere you want to be. So this is expanded almost exponentially now with the number of sites that we have to work with to provide you with low latency. We have a lot of commercial sites. That's the red, the blue, excuse me, the red, and then it's outlined, it's planned. Then the government sites, EU sovereign sites, dedicated regions, uh, database at Azure, Google at Google or AWS. So you can see there's a variety of these, and these are constantly growing. So these literally change on a monthly basis as we make new deals and other folks make deals with us. And it's really helpful if you want something somewhere to let your partners know, so that we can work together in an effective way. Because at the end of the day, all of us as an industry want to make you successful wherever you are, and that's the real key element of this process. So the other thing to think about it is that in each of our regions, we strive, We're not entirely successful, but we shoot for having 3 data centers in each region. And we call those availability domains. Inside each availability domain, and this is true, if you have an availability domain, you have 3 fault domains inside that availability domain. So these are groups of racks that are completely independent and aren't going to get a single. If one of these go down, you're not going to lose all of them. You can lose the whole AD, of course, but if you lose an AD, it's unlikely you're going to lose any of the other 2 ADs at any one time. So you have a really good system of systems to work with and not be too concerned about. Uh, there's always some concern about recovery. So one of the other things is our physical network. So each of the racks for Oracle racks are either 2 socket, they can be AMD, they can be ARM, they can be Intel systems with or without GPUs, with or without embedded in ENVE storage or flash in the box itself. And then we have NAS-like storage boxes that are just simply loads and loads of flash. And that's all in the systems as they are. But each of those boxes, whether they be flash boxes or be hardware boxes, if you will, each of them has 2 smart NICs. Each of those smart NICs is a minimum of 25 gigabit right now. For our high performance and GPU based systems, they're a minimum of 125 gigabit and 100 gigabit. And that 100 gigabit has a new device driver, again, about 2 years old now. Again, from not from NVIDIA, actually, it's from Oracle, that gives you read and write directly into your RAM. And that was able to be taken place not only by the new device driver, but the fact that the RAM now is faster and a whole other set of parameters have been able to set as well. So we have the ability to control that, the physical network, through off-box virtualization. And the way that is we have, since we have all those NICs, we have the central router, if you will, essentially a Linux box that is now has your Dome Zero hypervisor for your that controls all those smart NICs, and then another hypervisor on that central box that is your Dome Zero for all your virtualization, as well as a switch, so we can turn off and on our bare metal systems as well. So we isolate everything. It gives us a lot of control over where the data is going and make sure that we manage it correctly for you, and make sure you really don't have any overload of any particular routing system within the the rack or within the data center itself. So on that virtual network, that's where we hang our baubles, our products, whether it be bare metal and GPU systems, our virtual machines and containers, our Exadata specialized Oracle database systems with the capability for rack as well, our general database systems, and everything is in NVMe, but we can have it in either as a block system or object file. And then we have our load balancers and our security that are all in place for you as well on those systems. If you have any questions as we go forward, please put them in the Q&A. So what does our architecture look like? This is just an example where you would have someone would have 2 availability domains, and that's what it would look like in the current way. But I'm going to skip through that. It's not important. You're going to get the PDF of this if you pull it down. So the key element here is sort of the center of your security is your networking. You control how you set up that network. You control the CIDR blocks. You control what is public, what is private. Public has a access to the wild, wild west or the internet, and the sub and a private subnet doesn't. That's as simple as it is. So you can still have access to it in a private way using a NAT or mask router. And we call routers gateways. And that's about That's a good thing. Many of you have a jump server, or you worked with a jump server. We have a bastion that we pull in place. Say just a change in names. This is actually a service though, so that you can start it and stop it and set it up so it'll only last for a few minutes for a particular instance. And then when you go away, it goes away. So that can be helpful, in particular with your security. So we also provide um, the key element to this is that we're monitoring everything, right? We're not seeing what you're doing. We do have not have access to your keys. You are the only people that have access to the keys. So those keys can change. You can have regional replication or asymmetric keys or both. So you can have different keys in different regions on different domains in different compartments, and you manage that. And they're stored in a hardware security module in the rack itself. So that's what it makes it effective, and also gives you more security. The certificates are there as well. Um, what else do I want? Well, we have global points of presence, of course, and we have built-in denial of service protection. We have WAF protection, and in addition to traffic management at the edge as well. Internally, as I mentioned, we have a global Samuel 2 capability with auth 0 and auth others in there, auth X, let's call it, capability. So we can pretty much talk, not pretty much, we can talk to anybody out there and anybody can talk to us. So if you work at it, it's not straightforward, but if you work at it, and your security guys will do that for you. Keep leaning on them, so that you can log in once in the day, and then you can go to everything that you're capable of going in and log off and not have to do it again until the next day. But um, otherwise, you're going to have to do multiple logins as you go to one place to another. But it's a work in progress. But in theory, you should be able to do this going from one place to another. It's software. What can I tell you? It has to be implemented properly. But we do have a lot of different capabilities here. Let's see if I want to jump out anything else. Oh, because we're logging everything, number one, you have access to those logs. And in addition to that, but we've written a lot of software around that logging, which is essentially anything to do with something that's different, right? It just anomaly detection. And we've set up different tools for that, whether it be Cloud Guard, Security Zone, vulnerability scanning, threat detection. All these are just specialized scripting that you can change and that you can work with within our system to strengthen it or weaken it the way you want it to be to get your job done and provide yourself with security. The default for us is always on deny, deny, deny. You cannot do anything without a policy with giving you permission. Let's talk just briefly about that just a second. So this is our Oracle Cloud Identity Platform. You're going to have the capability of put that for your access government, your governance, excuse me, your identity access management, and it has a whole suite as well to give you management of your things like your password, right? You want to be able to control how often you change your password, what the requirements for that password is, two-factor identification, all those types of things are built into this platform for you to control. If you don't turn anything on, it's all going to be turned off. So it's up to your admins to control this and put together. So the other thing we provide is compartments. And think of these compartments as a directory, just as you think of directory in Linux or directory in Windows, you know that inside those directories are files. And people that have permission to have access to those policies, usually by what groups that that you're part of, it's similar, only instead of being directories, they're actually logical grouping of related resources inside the data center. In addition, not just the data center, inside your tenancy. And what that means is actually global. So if you set up something in Ashburn, there's a mirror of that set up in Frankfurt. And in those circumstances, if you do from one to the other, some of those policies will apply depending upon who has set up your policies in different locations. So some of your policies won't. So you've got to make sure you know what you're working in. The key thing is to know what region you're in, what compartment within, and what your permissions are in that respective compartment. So the way you do that is through an individual belongs to a group, and a group has access through policies into the system. So in this example, they've set up things where your shared systems, which are controlled by your shared service admin, service admin is simply analytics cloud service. Your IAM admin just controls your IAM in this case. Your infrastructure admin really just is, by this description, is just controlling your networking. Might have called them a network admin group. But anyway, however you want to set it up, you can. You can mix. A lot of folks do something like production, development, uh, database, those types of things. So whatever makes sense to you. And so this is just a fancy slide to show that we've merged our two different services, which was the identification service and then identification at access management uh, access management service together. So this is what gives you the ability to go to Oracle, but also to third-party apps and to your apps on premise if you set it up. And you can go to different clouds as well if you set it up. So you have users belong to groups. And just for completeness, we've also added the concept in this particular slide of instance principals controlling dynamic groups. So just as a user has to be part of a group, an instance principal, which would be a machine, whether it be a virtual machine or a bare metal machine, can then have rules that control other machines. So it's just a way of doing growth and decay, clusters, that type of thing. Doing a data based system can sometimes require that setup. In any case, whatever service you want to work with, we will provide you with the correct documentation for you to set this up and examples such that you'll only have to change the names of the users and the groups as you go forward. Here's an example. So in this case, and they all start, this is the format. So it's allow a group, it's always a group, some group name to some verb, some resources, somewhere, right? And it's always a compartment. It can be a tenancy. You do it in the entire tenancy, but that's not recommended. And there's also, you can add a where condition here where certain conditions apply. But the simplest way is like this. So this user belongs to group A. In group A, they can manage, so they can start, stop, terminate any compute resource inside compartment A. User B, he doesn't need access to all that, right? So he just needs to inspect. So he can see what's in compartment B, but he can't do squat, right? He can't do anything, can't start anything, can't stop anything. And there'd be reasons for that. Perhaps his job is to inspect and to just see what's there and to keep a record of it. And then he could write a code that can go in there and use this to see what's in that particular compartment. We give you other tools for that too. So, but again, this is just a continuation of the discussion of the policy syntax. So you have one of four verbs, only four: manage, use, read, and inspect. And then you have all these different ways of slicing and dices the resource types. So you can have the whole family, or you can have individual bits of the family to put that together. So we want to look at monitoring, logging, notifications, and alarms. And just for grins and giggles, we've included Resource Manager here. So monitoring everything that's provided by any operating system or any service is going to be available to you through logging. In particular, your audit logs, which are anything that anybody does, whether it be in the UI or otherwise is always distilled down into a call, and that call, an API call, that API call is stored, and we can't see it. It's in on your keys. If you have access to those keys and have access to your audit logs or any other cost custom or security log, that's who has access to it. And of course, the machine has access to it if you set it up properly. And then you can set up notifications and alarms in the process. And this also can include your monitoring metrics so that you can, for example, expand your back end set on a load balancer if your particular your CPU usage on average becomes too high, for example. And then resource manager, this is a standards-based infrastructure automation based on unmodified open source Terraform code base. What this really is a way from, we manage some, you know, Fortune 500, Fortune 100, Fortune 50 companies. And they have a lot of admins, some of them, and they control admins in different places, right? So one of the things we did was we don't touch Terraform, but we do provide a queuing system, and we provide it as a service. We don't, there's no charge for it, but what it allows you to do is not be stepped on by somebody else. Also, a couple of other things, we provide the capability of you to get a state file where you can see what your current state is, sort of printed out for you, if you will, and then you can compare the state file you have against the state file you had before and see if somebody else changed it, because this does not keep you from being stepped on by somebody that goes to the UI, right? This only controls Terraform that's been used with the resource manager. If it's a Terraform independent of that, you've just stepped on other folks. If you're using the UI, if you're using the API, if you're using the SDKs with Python or Bash or Go, then you can step on folks. But as long as you keep everybody disciplined and using the resource manager to go in there, or before you change something, take a look at the state file and then make sure you change it back before somebody else uses it. Then, but the smart thing to do is just use a resource manager and be polite to your brothers and sisters in admin. So networking, this is absolutely straightforward. This is just vocabulary. This is how we set up the software defined network. So we call it a virtual cloud network, a VCN, private customizable cloud network, and you can decide whether the IP addresses. All my examples are going to be 32-bit. You can, if you need to address the number of hydrogen atoms in the known universe, we do provide 64-bit IPv6 as well. So that is there for you, but why? In case, though, if you're there is a legitimate need for those in some circumstances. Subnets, you can slice and dice those any way you want to. You can have up to 50 virtual cloud networks in your tenancy. You can have another 50 subnets for each of your virtual cloud networks. So you can slice and dice your IP addresses very tightly and control them very tightly. And remember, when you do that, you have your firewalls both at the subnet level, which we call network security lists. And then we have at the VNIC level, we have network security groups as well. So you can provide a lot of security. Your gateways, routers are other types as well. And what they do is, again, I like the gateway name. It does say that you're controlling access to different places, right? You're like pointing the spigot at different locations and providing that next routing bit, that where to go next, right? I started in ARPANET, so that was just you're free. You can go anywhere you want to any one of the other 500 or 600 Sun servers that were out there at the time in 82, 83. In any case, deployment instances for OCI can be bare metal. Of course, there are racks and racks of racks and racks. Of course, those can be used through our off-box virtualization. You can create virtual machines, containers, and functions. What's a function? It's a specialized container. The real difference is the way it's charged. These are, you're sitting there and you're paying for the amount of storage in that container and the amount of threads in that container. Here, you're not charged for anything until you use it. So typically, these are pre-written for you, or you can modify. We provide you with some examples so that these might be called a half a million times in some circumstances a month, and it's pennies on the time, right? So the idea is, though, you're not paying for the storage and the threads if you're not using them. So this you only get charged for this when you use that particular container. Storage, everything's NVMe storage, just to reinforce. You can have local NVMe where you have the NVMe in the box itself. You can have a block volume. You can have a file. You can have a file storage, a file system. We have multiple file systems capable. We of course default to NFS. We did buy Sun, and they did sort of invent the first network file system, thus the NFS. But we also have a whole list of HPC file systems, as well as some of the legacy ERP systems like EBS. We have those as well. And then everybody has object storage of some sort. And these are just unstructured data. You can look at that, but that's essentially 5 types of data that's out there, whether it be NFS, excuse me, AWS S3, Azure blobs, or our object storage. It's all the same, which gives us a real, as an industry, capability to do data lakes, right? So data lakes are simply the use of object storage as a data location for your relational database to reach out and grab it out of your data warehouse, because there's only so many types of data. It reduces the ETL in the process because the machine will figure out the pattern pretty quickly. So what are the options we provide with our, this is for Oracle database only. We have a whole, we are Oracle. We have a whole methodology of putting Oracle's data system out there for you. You can just bring your license and put it on either a bare metal system or a database, and you can get data guard and you've got it, right? So that actually you automatically get to whatever license you have, automatically becomes an SE2 if you move to the for free in the cloud, simply because we're not going to let you have it up there without security and without data guard capability in those systems. You know, on premise, you can buy one without those. Then we provide a service. We provide other aspects of that service. It basically gives you the standard and enterprise editions, which and can include rack, data guard, automatic backup. And in other words, we'll do this for you. And all you have to do is manage the database and the data inside it. Of course, if you want to actually have the best performance out there, is you want to be on an Exadata platform. They're getting really fast. And then if you don't want to do anything but work with the data and have us do everything for you, you can have a fully managed through autonomous data systems. And this is smoke and mirrors, guys. This is magic. Longtime database administrators love this. They have to do less and they get better performance and capability. Every autonomous database system runs on an Exadata platform. So, and you can have one that is simply, excuse me, you can have one that is simply a serverless, we call it, where you share an Exadata platform. And this is great for development. You can do it with as little as a shared thread as well. So you can have very, very low instances caught. You can, we charge for minimum of 1 hour and a minimum of 20 gigabytes and a minimum of a tenth of a thread. So you can do a lot of, in fact, those are always free, you know, actually in those circumstances. But the things is you can do a lot in autonomous, let your developers start a few of them, small ones, work with small data, and you can do a lot in those circumstances to prove out systems. Right now, we offer it in 19C, 21, and 23 AI in those systems. And the other thing is it has all kinds of capability with respect to the data system as it is today. So we worked it out with Azure that you can have those systems in place. Excuse me. We also have, as of September, we have it with AWS and with Google as well. So each of those are a little weirder. Azure, frankly, is the most straightforward. It is almost like dropping cable in between racks. AWS, it's a little trickier. Google is a little trickier, but it has many of the same effects. But if you want access to Oracle's database in those respective clouds, there is a way to do it, right? So, uh, and we have our AI vector search with respect to our converged data system as well. And this applies to all the different applies to 23 AI and to all the different methodologies of deploying it on 23A. You can take a look at 23 AI today, get a developer's license for free, download it on site, and play with it. You can also do 23 AI in an autonomous database serverless upside to see what it looks like and work with. So now I'll turn it over to Winnie.
Thanks, Lynn. Okay, so I know Lynn covered a lot, but today's demo will just really be diving into the identity portion of what he talked about. So we'll go over domains, we'll go over policies specifically and how to create them. So one of the first things you'll want to do is head over to the navigation menu on the left-hand side, and then you'll go over to identity and security. And under identity, this is where you'll find a lot of the topics that Lynn covered earlier. So you have domains, policies, compartments. The first thing we're going to go through are domains. And within your domains, this is where you'll set up your users and your groups. And as Lynn mentioned, those are essential to have before you can start setting up your policies, since those policies refer to groups. So just like many, many different resources in OCI, they will be created in a specific compartment. So for example, here, we are currently in the Vision Corp compartment, but I'll go ahead and change this since I want you to see a resource that already has something. All right, so we have a domain inside our infrastructure compartment that we'll get to in just a second. But first, I want to show you how you can create an identity domain. So the first step would be to go ahead and set up a display name for your identity domain, and then give your domain a description. And then you'll need to specify what type of domain this will be. So there are a couple options for you to choose from. This really just depends on your use case that you have for this specific identity domain. So we have a free type, we have Oracle Apps Premium, we have Premium, and we also have external user. So you can see exactly what comes with the specific type of domain you're looking at. And then under that, you can set aside a domain admin. So they'll basically kind of just manage your domain for you, and they'll have more access than probably your other users in your domain. And then lastly, you'll need to store this domain in a compartment. So you get to choose a specific child compartment or parent compartment that you want to store this domain in. And then that's all you would need to get started on creating your domain. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at this existing production identity domain. So we have a couple options up here. You can edit this domain. That would mainly just be the name, description, and the type. You can change that as well. And then you can also move this resource to a different compartment if that's something you need to do. You can add tags to this domain. You can reset all passwords and some other actions. You can manage regions and also deactivate this domain. And then under that, you have some information about this specific domain. So most notably, you can see the OCID, which is a unique identifier that's given to all the resources that you create in OCI. You can see the domain type. And if it's being replicated, you can see where it's being replicated as well as the home region. Under that, you have a couple other sections too. I won't go through everything, but you can onboard users from this overview page. You can manually create your users or import users from a CSV file if you already have that ready. And you can also sync your users from Active Directory. With identity domains, multi-factor authentication is also required, so you'll need to configure MFA for your identity domain as well. And then within this specific production domain, we can take a look at the left here, and you can see exactly what is included in this domain. So you can see users and groups and dynamic groups are part of each identity domain. So we'll go ahead and take a look at users here. And then we only have one user here, but I think it gets the job done for this specific demo. I'll show you how to create a user. It is a fairly simple process. You'll need to give your user a name, last name, and then also a username/email. And then if you already have groups that have been created and you want to add this user to specific said groups, then you could do that here. And you basically just kind of skip a couple steps and do that from the page here. Yeah, and then once you hit create, you'll be able to find your user as a member of this specific domain. And then on the left here, you have groups. So these are groups that you create in this specific domain. Currently, we have two. If you want to create a group, again, it is a fairly simple process. You'll give the group a name. You'll give it a description. And then if you have users created that you already know need to be a part of this specific group you're creating, you can add them from this page. And we'll take a look at these specific groups. Actually, I want to look at this one. Yeah. Okay, so in domain administrators user group, you'll see the users that have been added to this group. So currently we have one, but if I wanted to add additional users to this group, I could do so by just clicking assign user to groups. And as a reminder, your users can be a member of multiple groups. So they're not limited to just one group per user. You can also remove users from this group by checking the little checkbox and then clicking on remove user from group. All right, so once you kind of have your domain set up, your users and your groups, and you kind of have a overlying compartment structure set up, one of the next steps you'll want to do is set up policies so that your users or your different principals, they can have access to the correct resources. So we'll go back to identity. And then we'll head over to policies on the left-hand side. So policies are stored outside of specific identity domains, but you'll need to specify specific identity domains and the groups inside it in order to create a policy statement. So we'll go ahead and click on Vision Corp here. So yeah, policies also follow, being stored in specific compartments. So right now I'm in Vision Corp compartment, which is where I want to be. And then I'll go ahead and create a policy. So first step would be to give it a name and then a description. And then you'll want to choose which compartment you want this policy to be stored in. So this step is really important because when you're figuring out which compartment to attach your policy to, it must be under the same scope as the compartment you've selected up here. So I'll show you what to do and what not to do when you're kind of setting up your policy statements in just a bit. So we will choose we'll choose infrastructure. And then this is where we can get to building out the policy statement. So there's a couple ways to use this. You can either right off the bat just enable manual editor. This is really great for people who have experience with policy building. They can just type in whatever policy they're trying to build without having to fill out prompts. But if someone is newer to policy building, but they still want to create impact, then they can try to use our policy use cases. So we have a ton of use cases for you to sift through. They're mainly based on service. So for example, I'll go ahead and click on database management. And then based on your use case that you select, OCI will populate with policy templates that you can choose from. So based on database management use case, these are the policy templates that you can choose from. And I'll go ahead and choose this first one here. After you select your template, you can see a little summary of what this policy entails. And then under that, you'll need to specify the identity domain and the groups and the location that you want to use for this policy statement. So we'll go ahead and choose an identity domain. And this identity domain selection is also based on the compartment selection you choose up here. So because we're working in infrastructure compartment, we only have one identity domain in there, and that would be the production domain. And then based on your identity domain selection, you can select the group that lives in that domain that you want to use. And as a reminder, you can also use dynamic groups instead of user groups for your policy statements as well. And then lastly, this is where you would specify the location. So where do you want to attach this policy to? And since this location does need to fall under the scope of the compartment you chose up here, it basically needs to be a child compartment or the exact same compartment of this compartment up here. So, for example, so if I choose infrastructure compartment, that will give me no error because it is the same location as the compartment it lives in. But for example, if I choose a different compartment, let's say info security, it is outside of the branch or scope of the compartment you chose up here, then we'll end up getting an error. It'll tell us that the selected compartment must be in the scope of the policy compartment selected above. So let's go back to infrastructure. And so once you fill out everything up here, you'll get a populated policy statement based on everything you filled out. So this is satisfactory for you and what you wanted to build, then you can definitely go ahead and click create and Oracle will get that set up for you. But let's say you want to make some tweaks or add something to the end, then what you can do is click on manual editor and whatever you created previously will populate over. You can make any edits and if you want to include a where condition at the end, this is where you would be able to do so. And whenever you're ready to, enforce this policy, then you can just click create, or you can click create another policy to get started on another one. All right, so that's how you would create your policies inside your tenancy. Let's take a look at an existing policy. So I'm going to click into Vision Corp Read All. And you can see here, inside this policy, we have statements. Right now, we only have one, but you can also edit these policy statements that have been created already. So you can edit existing statements, or you can add additional statements to be saved under Vision Corp Read All. So you are able to store multiple policy statements within one policy. That's just kind of the way we organize our policy statements by grouping them like that. All right. So that kind of covers the identity portion of what I wanted to show everyone. So next up, I want to quickly go through how you can create a compute instance. So we'll go back to the menu button and we'll head over to compute. And then under compute, we'll go straight into instances here. And I just want to show you quickly, how you can create an instance in OCI. So one of the first steps would be to give your instance a name. And then you want to select the compartment that you want this instance to live in. And then this is the placement for your availability domain. So compute instances are availability domain specific. So within your region, you'll need to choose which AD you want to specify for use for this compute instance. So because I'm in the Ashburn region, there are 3 available ADs for me, so I can choose between any of the 3 ADs. Security, at default, shielded instance and confidential computing will be disabled, but you can also edit that. And then next, probably one of the most important parts would be to choose your image and shape for this specific compute instance. The shapes will determine the number of CPUs, the amount of memory, and other resources allocated to an instance. So you can change this image that has been selected at default. There are multiple images for you to choose from. You can choose Oracle Linux, Ubuntu, Red Hat, Windows, or you can also use your own image. And then next up, you'll need to choose the shape. So the shape depends on the instance type. So either a virtual machine or bare metal machine. Bare metal machines are more powerful. So if you need strong performance, this is probably something you'd want to lean towards more. But as you can see, depending on your instance type, you get different shapes to choose from. So just going with virtual machine here, you have different shape series. You have AMD, you have Intel, Ampere, and you can also select previous generations too. So depending on which shape series you choose, these are the different shapes that you can select from. And I won't go through all of them, but I'm just kind of giving you a glimpse at what's available. So you can toggle the number of CPUs and also the amount of memory. And then in addition to, just creating your compute instance, you do need to set up a VNIC that connects to your instance. So you'll need to give your VNIC a name, and then you can also either select an existing VCN, or you can also create a new VCN for this specific compute instance to use. And you can also enter a subnet OCID. So right now I'm selecting an existing VCN, so that's why it's letting me choose the VCN depending on the compartment up here. But if I click on create new VCN, then it'll take me through the basic steps to set up a new VCN. And then you'll need to set up primary VNIC IP addresses. And you can also add SSH keys. So either you can have Oracle generate a key pair for you, or you can upload public key files, paste public key files, or public keys, sorry, or you can opt for no SSH keys. And then you can set up your boot volume. So a boot volume is a detachable device that contains the image used to boot the compute instance. So you can specify a specific custom boot volume size if that is something that meets your requirement. You can also use in-transit encryption here and encrypt this volume with the key that you manage. You can also attach block volumes to this compute instance. And you can set up live migration as well. Right now I can't, but it should be listed as an option for you too. And at the end here, you can go ahead and click create, or you can save as stack. So if you need to reuse all of these configurations to create another compute instance, you can just use the stack to create it, and you don't have to go through all the configurations again. And then lastly, on the right-hand side here, this is a summary of your costs for the specific compute instance based on what you've selected up here. So for me, the estimated cost is $37.96. All right, so we're pretty much at the top of the hour, so I will hand it back to Borna.
Awesome session. Thank you, Winnie and Lynn. I really appreciate your time and help with this session, and I hope it was a good learning experience for everyone. Also, if you'd like to learn more, we also have additional resources available in various different ways from Oracle University, as well as other live labs available for you to learn, and as well as additional documentation. If you like for us to conduct personalized training sessions for your organization, please do email us at our personal training email, and we will be gladly be able to reach out to you. If you want us to conduct just hands-on lab, we have our newly designed Quick Shop Live Labs for a more expedited hands-on learning towards a particular topic. Also, under our Code Innovate program, we will co-develop a solution for you based on your use case. Also, if you enjoyed our Day One and Beyond series, we have other topics available within our Day One and Beyond series that you can take a look at. And yes, our next session will be on January 21st for the Intro to Cloud Operations. And please don't forget to go to our Day One and Beyond page and register for the next session if you're interested. And I recommend that you bookmark the Day One and Beyond page to check out frequently for any sessions you'd like to see further on. And with that, thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you all next time. Have a great day.